You gave me the power.
I thank the Lord. I'd like to begin by saying that I come from a good family. My family was a God-fearing family. My grandmother, she was a God-fearing woman. And my grandfather, he was the pastor of 2 churches. And I was brought up in the church. And when we wasn't going to church, we were having church at home. And it was always church, Sunday school, church on Sunday, Bible studies, prayer meetings, and we were always in service. And as I grew older, I began to feel like I was missing out on the world, that I was missing out on something out there in the world. And when I became old enough to make decisions for myself, I decided that I wanted to try out the world, not knowing that whether I would be happy or not, but I thought, that I was missing out on something. And when I stepped out there in the world, I thought I was a pretty strong person. I felt like I could handle anything. And when I stepped out there, I began to do things that I said that I never would do. I said I never would drink. I began to drink. I said I never would smoke. And I began to smoke cigarettes and smoke weed and smoke crack cocaine. And like I said before, I always thought that I was a pretty strong person, but I became an alcoholic. I became a crack cocaine addict. I would find myself almost going into a season trying to smoke crack cocaine. I would be up all times of the night, and it got to the point where I could not keep a job. And when I lost my job, I started doing things that I said that I never would do. I got into prostitution. I got into stealing, criminal background. I started sleeping around with different men. I got into lesbianism, and I just started beginning to do things that were very shameful, things that I said that I never would do, and I felt condemned because I knew better, but I chose to do these things, and I was trapped, and I felt so condemned that I just felt like that even God wouldn't forgive me because I knew better. And I began to cry out to God. But seemed like the more I cried out to God, the worse the things got. And as I would continue to cry out and worse, and things got worse and worse. And I was about to give up. And the only thing that kept me from committing suicide was that I remember what my grandparents told me. They said, one day you're going to need God. We're not going to be there, and you're going to need God. I didn't look at it as, I didn't understand it as a child, what they really meant. because I considered them my God. I would always ask them for what I needed. And when I got out there in the world and found out that it was a dog-eat-dog world, the world don't love you like your family love you. I thought that I was a pretty strong person. And as I began to smoke the crack cocaine and drink the alcohol, it started out as pleasure, but then it began to take a toll. And I found myself not being able to stop when I wanted to. See, I didn't see the end of the picture. I just saw myself having fun, and then it got where I couldn't control it. And I found myself when I wake up in the morning, I had to have a drink every day, and I would have to smoke crack cocaine every day, and it began to cause me to be up all night. I couldn't go to work the next day, and it just caused me to lose everything. I lost my job, and so therefore it caused me to go to the streets. And when I went to the streets, I got into the prostitution, criminal background, lesbianism, all those things that I said that I never would do. My personal hygiene, couldn't keep my hair done because everything that I made and all the money that I made, I owed it to the dope man. And I just was living on the streets. I was living from pillar to post. I didn't have nowhere to live. I always said that I never would live with a man without being married to him. I ended up shacking up with a guy that I was not married to. I had a crack house. All my dreams and visions just went down the tubes. I always wanted to be a nurse. I became depressed. My self-esteem, I had very low self-esteem. I had got so depressed I wanted to commit suicide, but because of what my grandparents had taught me about the Lord, I didn't want to die and go to hell, but I did not want to live like that. And I knew that I could have gone into rehab, but what I needed, I knew couldn't no man help me. I knew couldn't nobody help me but God. And as I began to cry out to God, it seemed like things got worse and worse and worse. And the only thing that kept me from committing suicide was God. So I thank God. But this one particular time, I cried out to God. I separated myself from my family because I was ashamed. I was isolated. I felt like I was all alone. I wasn't ready to die and wasn't fit to live. And I remember I had been gone. I had left away from home, stayed away for about 4 days. And I had been drinking and smoking all day and night. And I came in the house that night. And my boyfriend, he was drunk asleep. And I remember sitting on the side of the bed. And I had turned my face to the wall. And I cried out to God, not knowing. I didn't have a lot of faith. I didn't have no faith at all because I didn't feel like I deserved the love of God. And as I began to cry out to God, I was just hoping that God would hear me and help me because I was tired of myself. And I cried out to God in all honesty, and I said, Lord, I say, I'm tired. And I said, God, I can't help myself. And I said, if you don't help me, I'm going to die like this. And I didn't want to die like that. And I left it like that, hoping that God would help me. I didn't know if he would or if he could. And shortly after that, and like I said to you before, I had isolated myself from my family. My sisters that lived in Chicago, I had been separated from them for 10 years. My family here in Memphis, I had isolated myself from them. They hadn't seen me in 2 years. They didn't know where I lived. But a couple of weeks later, after I had prayed that prayer, I walked out of my door and I was going to my next door neighbor's house. I had been drinking some beer and we were getting ready to go buy some more crack. And as I stepped out on the porch, I saw a car pull around the corner. And it was a red car. And as the car pulled around the corner and stopped, I looked at the car and my sister and them stepped out of the car. They was about a half a block away from me. And when I saw them step out of the car, I heard the voice of God spoke to me and said, this is your chance. And when I saw them, I don't know if I dropped the glass or what, but I began to walk towards them. And as I was walking towards them, they reached out their arms to me, and when we met, we embraced each other. They didn't look at me funny. They didn't ask me no questions. They just put their arms around me and told me how much they loved me. And as they embraced me, they let me know that they love me. And I asked them, I said, how did you all find me? At that particular time, I was living in a housing project with my boyfriend. And I said, how did you all find me? And they told me, they said, they had come to Memphis for a funeral. But God had told them, said, don't leave until you find your sister. And the last they heard, my family heard that I was living in Dixie Home housing project, that I lived in that area, but they didn't have an address, I didn't have a phone, and no one had been to my house. So they came to the project, and I said, but yeah, how did y'all find me? And they said, well, we were going from door to door and asking people, did they know me? And someone directed them to me. And like I said, they embraced me and took me in their arms. And I went back in the house and told my boyfriend, I said, I'm getting ready to go. I said, and I won't be back. Because at that time, I realized that God had heard me. And God spoke to my heart and let me know, this is your opportunity to be free. And as I went with them, this was on a Saturday, they said that they were going to church. They wanted to go to church that Sunday morning. Well, they wanted to go to Temple of Deliverance. And I said, I know where it is. I know where it is. And I said, I'm going too. And so when we got there, my hair, like I said, I wasn't keeping my hair up. You could look at me and tell what kind of person I was. I didn't have no hair around the sides. My lips were blistered. My eyes were red. My skin was dry. Spots in my face. And they just took me and bought me a perm and permed my hair and wrapped it and tried to make me look like something. Put some clothes on my body. And that next morning when we got up, I was the first one dressed. And I was standing in the front room. And I had the gospel music on. Mind you, I was still feeling a little buzzed up because I had been drinking and smoking for 4 days. And I was standing in the front room and had the gospel music on. And I said, well, I don't want to go to church. In my mind, I was thinking, I said, I don't want to go to church smelling like alcohol. And I'm be around hundreds of people, all these people, and looking bad, you know. And I could hear the enemy telling me, saying, you better get out of here. You better get out of here. God going to kill you. You know you ain't going to be able to make it. You know you're not going to be able to stop. So I felt the fear of not being able to make it. And I was tempted to go out the door. But a song came on the radio by Tremaine Hawkins. And I'm just going to sing a little bit of it. It says, he'll walk right in front of you to always protect you. So that devil can't do you no harm. And when I heard that song, the Spirit of the Lord came in the room and spoke to me again and said, the devil is here, but I'm here too. And I'm not going to let that devil do you no harm. And I will be with you step by step. That got me through till I made it to the church. And when I made it to the church, they had the altar call. When they had the altar call, I was afraid to get up because there was so many people. And the pastor, he stood up as he was going back to his seat at the end of the altar call. He came back to the edge of the stage and he said, it's someone here that needs to come now. Because if you don't come now, you won't make it back. And I knew that was God talking to me again, reaching out to me. And as I stood up, I don't even know how I made it to the altar. I made it to the altar. And I just raised my hands up to the Lord. And I went through the sinner's prayer to give my life back to the Lord. And so I gave my life to the Lord. But I thought God was going to have to do flips. I was going to have to do flips. I thought folks were going to have to lay hands on me. I thought I was going to be spitting. I thought all these things. But then none of that happened. And so when it was over, I was still wondering in my mind, was I saved? And After service was over and I walked out of the church, one of my sisters walked up to me and they said, "Are you saved?" And I said, "I don't know." And they took me through the sinner's prayer again. And so I confessed that I'm saved, but I still was feeling on the inside and I didn't know for sure because I know I had done so much. So I went on with them in Jesus' name. I went on with them and they took me out to eat. And I went with them over to my grandmother's house and over to my sister's house. And then when we lay down to sleep, when I got up the next morning and I went to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I could hear the voice of God again. And the voice of God said, "Look at your hands." And I looked at my hands and they wasn't shaking no more. And I didn't have no more cravings. And I said, "God, you saved me and you delivered me instantly." And I thank God that I learned that salvation is not always spitting and laying hands, but it's by faith. Asking Jesus Christ to come into your heart. And when you ask him to come into your heart and mean it, he comes in and he delivered me from the drugs and the alcohol. I didn't even have a taste for it anymore. And I wasn't shaking and needed a drink. I did not need a drink. And I thank God from that point on, God has been with me step by step. And I will forever be grateful. And I love the Lord. And I appreciate God. And I told God this. I said, "God, I am so grateful." And I said, "I won't forget." I said, "I won't forget what you have done for me." And I said, "And I will reach back. And I will get my sisters and my brothers. And I will tell them that you love them. And that you can deliver them. And you will set them free. And that I will live for you. In Jesus' name." And God, ever since then, and it's been 12 years now. And ever since then, God, like I said, my dreams and my visions went down the tube. Criminal background, all these different things. They told me I could never be a nurse. I need to go into another field. God, he said, "If I be for you, who can be against you?" So I went to the school. Different schools turned me down. But God blessed me to get into school and go through the nursing program here in Tennessee. And I thank God for that. And the Lord blessed people to open the door for me. I had to live in a shelter. And when I first got saved, well, the reason why I had to live in a shelter, because my family was saved, God-fearing people. But I had burnt down my bridges with them, stealing from them and lying to them and doing different things that I shouldn't have done. And they didn't understand the lifestyle that I had been living for over 10 years, how God could deliver you instantly like that. And they didn't trust it. And so they said, "You can't stay here, but we'll help you get into a shelter." And God, when I went to them and asked them to allow me to stay, God, they didn't let me stay with them, but God wanted me to learn how to trust him for myself. And God also, I want to say this, when you burn down your bridges with your family, the people that love you, you have to earn that trust back. And so I realized this when they said no. And tears began to come in my eyes when my aunt and uncle turned me down. But God told me to hold my head up and not to fear that he would be with me. And so I ended up going to a shelter. And that shelter was my rehab. I would go into the women's bathroom and I would pray and read my Bible. Every opportunity that I could get, I would keep my face towards God. I wouldn't look to the left nor to the right. The Lord blessed me with a job. I was working at Wendy's. Sometimes you have to crawl before you walk. Lord blessed me with a job working at Wendy's. Then I went to pest control. God was building me a reference the whole time. Things that sometimes you may have been working in an office somewhere. You may have been at the top. But God, sometimes you have to start at the bottom and work your way back up. Criminal backgrounds. A lot of times people, God forgive you, but society doesn't always forgive you. But if you stick with the Lord, God will keep you and open up doors for you. And when I before I went into the shelter, they had let me stay at a hotel overnight because there wasn't no open doors right away. And when I was in that hotel by myself, the enemy came to me and said, now you saved. And I had a few dollars in my pocket. And he said, now you saved. And you can go get you a hit. You know you can handle it. You know, you ain't gonna want, you know, you ain't gonna go past what you got and all that trying to talk to me. And I began to find myself thinking about going and getting me a hit. And I could see it, and I could taste it, and I could smell it. And then I felt a deep hurt in my heart